I walked out on a Tuesday, not in a storm of shouting, not with a slammed door, just a hand on the handle, one long exhale, and a soft click as the apartment door closed behind me. The hallway outside our place always smelled faintly like old carpet cleaner and someone else's cooking. That night it smelled like escape. Inside, the last thing I saw was the edge of our small dining table and her phone, face down, screen still buzzing against the wood. His name lighting it up. Again, our apartment sat high in the city, a modest box of glass and concrete tucked between taller buildings, with a narrow view of the street below and the hum of traffic that never really stopped. At night, the light from the windows across the way floated in like pieces of someone else's life, warm, soft, distant. Ours had grown dim. It did not start with the betrayal. It started long before that. With empty chairs and half-finished dinners, with the way she sat across from me, body here, mind somewhere else, with the way her fork moved but her eyes didn't. There was a time when dinner meant stories. She would talk with her hands, knocking over her water glass, laughing too loud at her own jokes. I used to pretend to be annoyed when she'd wipe her hands on my shirt, but secretly, it made me feel like I belonged to something. Lately, dinner had turned into weather, gray, still, passing through. Weeks before that Tuesday, I started noticing how often she angled her phone away from me, how she always seemed to know where it was, even when it wasn't in her hand. How she took it with her to the bathroom, the shower, the laundry room downstairs. Work, she said once when I asked why it was buzzing at midnight. Client stuff, she added, already turning her back toward the window. I nodded. Because that is what you do when you are afraid of the answer to the question you really want to ask. The city outside that night felt heavier than usual. Rain traced thin lines down the glass, turning the streetlights into smeared halos, and the sound of cars below rose up soft and constant, like a distant apology. She sat on the end of the couch, in her worn gray hoodie and leggings, legs tucked under her, phone glowing in her hands. The TV played something we had once watched together, laugh track echoing off the walls, now only filling the silence she refused to break. I watched her thumbs move, fast, confident, familiar, like muscle memory. Who are you talking to? The words came out quieter than I meant them to. She flinched just a little, not enough for most people to notice, but I knew her. Just a friend, she said, eyes staying on the screen a beat too long. A work friend. There is a moment, right before your life changes, when you still have the option to look away, to pretend you didn't see, to carry on as if everything is fine. I almost took it. I almost let the moment pass, almost swallowed the question pressing against my throat, but the phone buzzed again, and this time she smiled, not at me, at a piece of glass. Let me see, I said, her shoulders stiffened. It was so small, so quick, if you blinked you'd miss it. Why, she replied, finally looking up, anger starting to swim behind her eyes. Don't you trust me? Trust. Funny word to use when your phone might as well be another person in the room. It's late, I said. If it's a work thing, I just want to know why someone needs you this badly at midnight. She rolled her eyes and exhaled sharply, like I was a child asking for one more story before bed. You're overreacting, she muttered. It's not a big deal. Silence slipped between us and settled on the coffee table. Outside, a siren cut through the night, fading quickly back into the hum. Inside, the light from the TV painted soft colors on her face, and for the first time in a long time, I saw her clearly. The distance, the fatigue, the tiny spark of guilt she wasn't fast enough to hide. I did not grab the phone from her hand. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I just stood. The room tilted slightly, as if the floor understood before my mind did. I walked to the dining table, where her laptop sat open, notifications scattered in the corner of the screen. She watched me silent now, fingers frozen mid-text. Don't, she said, voice low. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Why not? I asked. She swallowed, her jaw clenched, her eyes darted toward her phone again. I did not open the laptop. I walked past it and toward the small console table by the door, where we kept our keys in a little ceramic bowl we bought on a random Sunday afternoon years ago, when we still went out just to be together. The keys clinked in my hand, too loud for such a small sound. Where are you going? She asked, voice thinner now. I stared at the door, at the chipped paint near the bottom where we once scuffed it moving in the couch, at the little hook where she used to hang her scarf every winter. I don't know yet, I said. I knew that if I looked at her, I might stay, so I kept my eyes on the door and turned the handle. Can we just talk? She added, the worry sharpening. The phone buzzed again, on the coffee table now, face up. I glanced back just once. His name appeared in a preview, a simple message, too familiar, too intimate. The kind of line you do not send to a married woman at midnight unless you think you have the right. She saw me see it. Her face drained, then flushed, guilt and panic colliding in a way I'd never seen before. My chest went strangely quiet, not empty, just still. I didn't ask who he was. In that second, I already knew enough. Wait, she started, standing up, phone in her hand now as if she could shove it into her pocket and erase what I had just seen. But I had nothing left to say that wouldn't break us completely. My fingers tightened around the keys. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, the distant traffic, everything grew louder, pressing in on me. I'm not doing this, I said, my voice calm in a way that scared even me. I can't live in a room where I'm competing with a screen or with him. Her eyes glossed over, but no tears fell. Not yet. This doesn't mean anything, she whispered. You're blowing it out of proportion. Maybe months ago, if she had said that then, I would have believed her. But now, the weight of all the quiet dinners and late nights and half-smiles sat on my shoulders like proof. I'm going, I repeated. She took a step toward me, bare feet on the cold floor, the same floor where we once danced in the kitchen at midnight, laughing at nothing, her head resting on my chest. Please, she said, the words small but sharp. Don't walk out, we can fix this. For a heartbeat, I saw the version of us that might have been two people at a table, choosing honesty, choosing to fight for each other instead of what they had been hiding. But then the phone buzzed again in her hand, and she looked at it, not at me. The choice was made long before I touched the door. I opened it. The cool air from the hallway slid over my skin like a new season. You made this choice a while ago, I said softly, not sure if I was talking to her or to myself. I'm just catching up to it. She stood there, phone pressed tight against her palm, lips parted like there was one more sentence that might save us if she could only find it. I stepped into the hallway, pulling the door gently toward me. Our apartment, our life, narrowed into a sliver of light between the frame and the wood, her silhouette in the doorway, the soft glow of the TV behind her. The empty chair at the table, still waiting for a meal we never finished. Don't leave, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. For a moment I almost turned back. Then the door closed, and her voice, the room, the life we had built together, all of it was on the other side, sealed away with a soft, final click. In the echo of that sound, standing alone in the dim hallway with the buzz of fluorescent lights above me, one thought settled in my chest. This is how it ends, or at least that is what I thought, until the day she came looking for me, and everything I had tried to bury rose quietly to the surface again. Outside, the rain felt colder than it had looked from the window. The city street glistened under the streetlights, puddles catching fragments of neon signs and red brake lights, cars hissing past like they had somewhere important to be. I had nowhere to go, not really. My bag was light. A change of clothes, my toothbrush, the charger I had yanked from the outlet without thinking. It swung against my leg as I walked, a small, rhythmic reminder that this time, I wasn't just taking a night to cool off. I was leaving. I found a cheap hotel a few blocks away, the kind of place that smelled like old smoke and disinfectant no matter how many times they painted the walls. The receptionist didn't look up when I gave my card. He slid the key across the counter with the bored efficiency of someone who had seen a lot of people check in late at night with faces like mine, tired, hollow, trying to pretend this was temporary. In the room, the bedspread was patterned with faded flowers, the lamp flickered if you bumped the nightstand, and the window looked out over the back alley instead of the city. For once, I was grateful not to see lights in other people's homes. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. No messages, no calls. I had left my ring on the kitchen counter. I realized that now, imagining it lying there in the glow of the TV, a small circle of metal that used to mean forever, now just a reminder. I thought about texting her, about saying something final, something measured and wise and clean, but everything my mind suggested felt either too cruel or too soft, so I did nothing. I lay back on the creaking mattress and listened to the rain tapping against the glass. Somewhere above me, footsteps moved across the ceiling. The smell of someone else's cigarette drifted through the thin walls. Sleep did not come. Instead, my mind replayed the last few months like a film stuck on loop, the late nights, the unexplained smiles at her phone, the muted dinners. And under all of it, one repeating image, his name on her screen. I had seen it clearly, first name, last initial, a small, familiar heart at the end of his contact, the kind of detail that does not belong in a marriage. I remembered the first time I sensed him without knowing his name. The way she started saying, "I'm exhausted," more often, but not the tired that comes from work. The kind that comes from living two lives. She started working late. Her girls' nights stretched longer. She showered as soon as she got home, the smell of unfamiliar cologne lingering on her scarf once, just faintly enough for me to question my own senses. I never asked then. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself I was being paranoid. I buried my doubts under long work hours and podcasts and scrolling through my own phone, even though no one was waiting for me there. My friends had asked how we were doing. I always said fine, because anything else would force me to look at the cracks I had been stepping over for months. At some point in the early morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand, her name. I stared at the notification, my chest tightening around my ribs. Are you really doing this? That was all the message said. 4 words, and suddenly I was back in our living room, the smell of burnt garlic, the blue glow of her screen. I turned the phone over, face down, letting the buzzing die out. For the first time, I decided she could be the one wondering instead of me. The next morning, the city was washed pale under a cloudy sky. I checked out of the hotel, the receptionist barely glancing up, and walked toward the only place that made sense. An old friend's apartment across town, a man who had seen my worst and still offered me a spare couch when life turned sideways. He opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair messy, eyes squinting against the morning light. "Damn," he said softly when he saw my face. "It's that bad." I didn't trust my voice yet, so I just nodded. He stepped aside and let me in without asking another question. His place was smaller than ours, cluttered with stacks of books and mismatched mugs. The couch sagged in the middle, and the kitchen table was buried under unopened mail. It felt honest. "Coffee," he offered. I nodded again, dropping my bag by the wall. As he moved around the kitchen, the kettle whistling, cabinet doors thudding gently, I finally found the words. "She's been seeing someone," I said quietly. The sentence tasted like metal. He didn't turn around immediately. He let the words hang there, the hiss of boiling water filling the gap. "You know," he asked, "or you're guessing?" "I saw his name on her phone last night," I replied. The way she looked at it, I don't have to guess anymore. He poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs, set one in front of me, and sat down. "What are you going to do?" he asked. The truth was, I didn't know. I knew how to leave a room. I knew how to walk away from a table. I did not know how to walk away from years. "I left," I said slowly. "I walked out. I don't know if I'm coming back." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good," he said softly. "You don't have to decide today. Just don't run back because you're scared of the empty space." The empty space, that was what I feared the most. The first few days were a blur of small, practical decisions, moving my stuff into his spare room, taking a leave from work, turning off the location sharing on my phone, silencing notifications. Her messages kept coming at first. "Where are you? Can we talk? Please answer. You're being dramatic. We can fix this. You're not the only one who's hurting." I read each one in silence, feeling my heart twist in familiar patterns. Sometimes my thumb hovered over the reply bar, the urge to explain, to soothe, to fix rising like an old reflex. But every time, I remembered the look on her face when the phone buzzed with his name, and she couldn't stop herself from glancing down. So I didn't respond. One night, my friend came home late to find me sitting in the dark living room, the only light coming from the city outside the window. "You've been in the same spot for hours," he said, gently flipping the light switch. "I don't know who I am without her," I admitted. He sat down across from me. "You're the guy who stayed when things got hard," he said. "You're the guy who trusted her when something felt off. You're the guy who walked away when you finally saw the truth. That's who." I swallowed hard. "She wasn't always like this," I said. "We used to be solid." "People don't usually wake up one day and decide to blow up their life," he replied. "It's slow, quiet, like a leak. You just didn't see the hole until the floor gave out." His words settled in the room like dust. Over the next weeks, grief came in strange shapes. It wasn't just crying, though there were nights when the weight of it all pressed on my chest so heavily I had to bury my face in a pillow to muffle the sounds. It was muscle memory. Reaching for my phone at 6 p.m. to text, on my way home, and stopping halfway through. Buying 2 coffees out of habit and having to throw one away. Hearing a song she loved in a grocery store and standing frozen in the aisle, staring at rows of cereal boxes while my throat closed. Her messages slowed down, then changed. First, anger. "So you're just going to abandon our marriage? You're punishing me. You're making this worse than it has to be." Then justification. "It wasn't serious. I was confused. You were distant too. We both made mistakes." Then finally something closer to honesty. "I'm sorry. I messed up. I don't know how to fix this. I didn't think you'd really leave." Those last words sat heavy on the screen. "I didn't think you'd really leave." Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe she had built a version of me in her head, the one who would always stay, no matter how thin the love stretched, no matter how far she wandered. I started seeing traces of him in the things she left behind. A shirt she bought that didn't match my taste, but she insisted I wear. A bar we started going to because the ambience was nice, though she always seemed more alert there, eyes scanning the door. I remembered a night months before I walked out when she came home with a new perfume. It was on sale, she had said, laughing, spraying it into the air. The scent didn't suit her, too sharp, too bold. But now, thinking back, I wondered who she had been trying to impress. One evening, my friend and I sat on his small balcony, the city stretched out below us, the sky a washed-out blue fading into gray. "You know what hurts the most?" I said, fingers wrapped around a warm mug. "It's not just that she cheated. It's that she built an entire secret world and left me outside of it. He nodded slowly. That's what betrayal is, he said. Not just what they do, but who they let in while they shut you out. I stared at the tiny lights in office windows across the city, imagining lives going on as if nothing had changed. She didn't think I would leave, I said, repeating her words, like she thought I'd always be there, a backup plan. What are you going to do if she comes back? He asked quietly. I opened my mouth to say she won't, but the lie stayed stuck behind my teeth, because I knew her. I knew the guilt would catch up eventually. I knew the way she hated unfinished conversations. I knew the part of her that couldn't stand losing, even when she was the one who had walked away first. I don't know, I admitted. The rain started again, soft and steady, pattering against the balcony railing, the smell of wet concrete rising from the street. In that moment, I told myself it was over, that all that remained now was learning how to live in the quiet she left behind. I didn't know that somewhere across the city, she was already trying to find the courage to follow that quiet trail straight to my door. She found me on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that felt too gentle for what it was about to hold. Sky a dull, pale gray, the street outside hushed, the smell of coffee drifting from my friend's small kitchen. I was at the table, hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching a thin line of steam curl up and disappear. My friend had gone out for groceries, leaving me alone with the soft ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of a radio in the apartment below. When the knock came, it didn't sound dramatic, no frantic pounding, just 3 steady taps against the door. I almost didn't move. Most people who knocked here were delivery drivers or neighbors asking to borrow something. No one came looking for me. I stood slowly, coffee still in my hand, and walked to the door. Something inside me stirred, a faint, familiar warning, the same feeling I had the night I saw his name on her phone. I opened the door halfway, already rehearsing a polite apology if it was someone at the wrong address. But it wasn't. She stood there in the hallway, hair damp from the drizzle outside, jacket zipped halfway, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to make sure I was real. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in the way she held herself, shoulders slightly hunched, fingers worrying the strap of her bag. Her makeup was minimal, like she had gotten ready too quickly, or cried long enough that trying to look perfect felt pointless. "Hi," she said finally, voice rough around the edges. I stared at her, the word hanging between us like a question we both already knew the answer to. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. "Your friend," she admitted, eyes flicking down. I went to our building." "You weren't there." I waited. Then I went again. And again. I finally asked the super if he'd seen you, and he mentioned he'd seen you leave with him one night. She nodded toward the apartment behind me. "So you tracked me down," I said. She swallowed hard. I had to. Silence settled again, thicker this time. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part wanted to pull her inside and ask every question that had kept me awake for weeks. Instead, I stepped back just enough to keep the door from closing on her face, but not enough to be an invitation. "What do you want?" I asked. She winced at the bluntness, but she didn't look away. "To talk," she said. "To explain. To apologize." A text wasn't enough anymore, I asked. Her gaze flicked up, meeting mine fully now. "No," she said, the word steady for the first time. "You didn't answer, and you were right not to. So I came." I let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of her presence in the doorway, like someone had dragged the past into the room without asking permission. "Okay," I said eventually, "you can come in. But we're not going to pretend this is normal." She nodded, stepping inside. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, her familiar scent mixing with the smell of coffee and rain. She glanced around the cluttered table, the worn couch, the stacked books. "You're really staying here," she murmured. "For now," I replied. She set her bag down near the door and folded her arms across her chest, as if trying to hold herself together. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "That's not true," I answered quietly. "You had him." Her eyes closed for a second, her face twisting with something between shame and regret. "There is no him anymore," she said. I gave a small, humorless laugh. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" I asked. "No," she replied immediately. "It's not meant to fix anything, it's just the truth." We stood there, 2 people in the middle of a borrowed living room, surrounded by someone else's furniture and the ghosts of our own decisions. "Sit," I said finally, gesturing toward the couch. She moved slowly, as if worried the wrong step would break something. I sat in the armchair across from her, the coffee mug now cooling in my hands. For a moment we just listened to the city outside, a car passing, a distant dog barking, the quiet drip of water from the balcony above. "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "Start with his name," I said. She blinked. "You saw it," she whispered. "Yes," I replied. I saw his name on your phone. I saw the way you smiled at his messages. I saw the way you looked at him even when he wasn't there." She stared down at her hands, twisting them together. "His name is Daniel," she said finally. "We met at work." Of course they had. It started, she paused, searching for the right words. It started with complaints, with venting. Was talking about deadlines and how tired we were and how everything felt heavy. "You could have told me those things," I said. "I know," she replied, voice breaking. "I know that now." Back then, it felt easier to say them to someone who wasn't inside my life. Easier to talk to someone who didn't see the mess, I said. "Yes," she whispered. I nodded slowly, the confirmation hitting in places I hadn't expected. "It wasn't about him at first," she continued. "It was about feeling seen, feeling interesting again. With you, everything felt like routines and bills and laundry and tight schedules. With him, it felt like I still had options." "And at what point did I stop being an option?" I asked. She flinched. It's not that simple," she said. "Isn't it?" I replied. "You chose to message him instead of talking to me. You chose to share things with him you wouldn't share with your husband. At some point, whether you said it out loud or not, you decided he was worth the risk of losing me." Tears pooled in her eyes now, finally, clinging to her lashes before spilling over. "I didn't think I'd lose you," she whispered. I thought you'd be angry, that we'd fight, that we'd yell and then somehow fall back into us." "You didn't think I'd really leave," I said, repeating her own message back to her. She nodded, eyes dropping again. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I told myself 100 stories to justify what I was doing. I told myself you were distant too, that we were both unhappy, that this was just a phase. But then you saw his name, and the way you looked at me," her voice cracked. "I realized I had been gambling with something I never believed I could actually lose." I sat in silence, letting her words settle. "I ended it," she said, "with him. The same night you left." "How noble," I said quietly, bitterness slipping through before I could stop it. "It wasn't noble," she replied, shaking her head, tears now freely falling. "It was ugly. He was angry. He called me a coward. He said I wanted to keep both worlds, and that I only ended things because I got caught." "Was he wrong?" I asked. She hesitated. "No," she admitted. "He wasn't. I did want both. I wanted the stability of you and the thrill of not being stuck, and I hate that part of myself. I hate that I hurt you to validate something I should have been working on inside us, not outside." I looked down at my hands, remembering the way they had once held hers, the way our fingers used to lace together without thinking. "You say you're sorry," I said slowly. "I believe you, but sorry doesn't rewind anything." "I know," she said. "I didn't come to ask you to pretend this didn't happen. I came because I couldn't stand the idea that the last thing between us was a closed door and a trail of messages you never answered." "Then what do you want?" I asked again. "Specifically, do you want me back? Do you want forgiveness? Do you want closure?" She inhaled sharply, like the air itself hurt. She stopped, eyes darting around the room as if the right word might be hiding on a bookshelf. "I want a chance to be honest. I want you to know that you weren't the reason I did this, even if I tried to tell myself you were. I want, if it's not too much, a chance for us to try again." There it was, the request hanging between us like a fragile bridge. "You want us to rebuild," I said slowly. "Yes," she replied, hope flickering in her eyes despite the tears. "I know it wouldn't be the same. I know I broke something that doesn't just heal overnight, but I'm willing to put in the work. I'll go to therapy. I'll show you my phone. I'll do whatever you need to feel safe again." I let her words wash over me, feeling the pull of the life we once had, the gravity of shared memories, shared holidays, shared routines. Part of me ached to say yes, to go home, to pretend that this was just a sharp turn in a long story, but underneath the ache was something quieter, something more frightening. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way," I said. Her shoulders sagged. "I expected that," she whispered. "It's not just what you did," I continued. "It's who you became while you were doing it. You learned how to lie to me without flinching. You built a separate life, and then climbed into bed next to me at night like nothing had changed. How do I unsee that?" She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, breathing shakily. "I don't deserve for you to unsee it," she said. "All I can do is stand here and own it. No excuses, no blaming you. I did this, I broke us, and if you decide you're done, I have to live with that." I stared at her, feeling something inside me crack, but not in the way it had that night in the apartment. This was different, less like a shattering, more like a quiet shift in the foundation. "What if I told you," I asked slowly, "that part of me misses you every day, and the other part looks at you now and sees a stranger?" She gave a trembling, sad smile. "Then I'd say that's honest," she replied, "and that you shouldn't rush yourself into deciding which part wins." We fell silent again, the only sound the muted traffic outside and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. "You're not the only one who's grieving," she said after a moment. "I walk through that apartment and it feels like a museum of bad decisions. Your ring on the counter, your empty side of the wardrobe, the chair you always sat in. You think you're the only one who lost something, but I lost you, and the version of myself I thought I was." I looked at her closely then, really looked. Under the guilt and the regret, there was fear. Not just of losing me, but of facing who she had been. "I used to love you in a way that felt like breathing," I said quietly. "Natural, automatic, I didn't question it. Now being here with you, every breath feels like a choice." Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't look away. "Then choose what keeps you alive," she whispered, "even if that isn't me." The honesty of that landed deeper than any apology. She stood slowly, picking up her bags, smoothing her jacket. "I'll go," she said. "I didn't come to corner you into an answer. I just needed you to know I'm not hiding anymore. If you ever want to talk again, I'll be there." If this was our last real conversation, I'm grateful I at least had it. She took a small step toward the door, then paused. "I'll keep waiting," she added softly, "for as long as it feels right for me to wait, not as pressure. Just so you know the door isn't locked on my side." Her hand hovered near the doorknob. I didn't stop her, didn't call her back, didn't ask her to stay. I watched her open the door, watched the gray light spill in from the hallway, watched her step out into it. She turned back one last time, eyes meeting mine with a mixture of hope and resignation. "Whatever you decide," she said, "you were always more than enough. My failure to see that is on me, not you." Then she was gone. The door closed with a soft thud, the echo settling into the room like dust. I sank back into the armchair, the coffee long gone cold, heart pounding not with anger, but with something quieter. A question. Could I forgive her without breaking myself in the process? Letting go did not happen in a single moment. It wasn't a dramatic speech or a smashed glass or a final, cinematic goodbye at the door. It started in the morning. Weeks after she had come to see me, I woke before the alarm, the room washed in that pale, early light that makes everything look softer. The city outside was quiet, as if it was still deciding what kind of day it wanted to be. I lay there on the borrowed mattress, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the muffled clink of dishes from a neighbor's kitchen. For the first time in a long time, my chest didn't feel heavy. The ache was still there, but it had changed. Less like an open wound, more like a scar pulling gently when I moved. I made coffee, the small kitchen filling with the familiar smell, and stood by the window watching people on the sidewalk below, a woman walking her dog, a man in a suit checking his watch, a kid on a scooter in a bright red jacket. Life going on. My phone was on the table, face down. Her name sat a few lines down in my recent messages, no new notifications blinking beside it. She hadn't reached out since that Sunday. I knew part of that was deliberate, a promise kept, a decision not to push. Part of me had been waiting anyway, listening for the chime that would pull me back into indecision. It never came. I wrapped my hands around the mug, breathing in the warmth, and realized something quietly. I didn't want it to. Later that week, I went back to our apartment alone. I hadn't told her I was coming. I had arranged it through the building manager, asking for a time when she'd be at work. The hallway smelled the same cleaning products, cooking, a hint of someone's perfume, but my footsteps sounded different this time, lighter. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the familiar creak of the floorboard by the entryway greeted me like an old memory. The apartment looked both exactly the same and completely different. Our pictures were still on the wall. The couch was still pushed slightly crooked against the back window. The little ceramic bowl for keys still sat on the console table, but there were small shifts. A new plant on the windowsill, different cushions on the couch. A blanket draped over the armrest that I didn't recognize. She'd been trying to make a home out of what we'd left behind. I walked through the room slowly, fingers trailing along surfaces we had once cleaned together, argued over, decorated, shared. The bedroom felt the strangest. My side of the wardrobe was mostly empty now, a few stray hangers clinking quietly when I opened the door. The ring I'd left on the kitchen counter was gone. On the bedside table, where my alarm clock used to sit, there was a small framed photo of us, taken years ago on some random afternoon, her head thrown back in laughter, my arm around her shoulders, both of us squinting against the sun. My throat tightened. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the memories come. Not the night I walked out, not the messages, not the betrayal, but the dinners we cooked together, the trips we planned, the nights we fell asleep mid-conversation. It would have been easy to let anger rewrite all of it, to declare that it was all a lie, but that would have been dishonest. There were real moments, real love, real joy, and then there were her choices. Both things could be true. I realized then that forgiveness, if it was ever going to exist, could not mean pretending she had never hurt me. It had to mean acknowledging everything, the good, the bad, the ordinary, and deciding which parts I was willing to carry forward and which ones I needed to set down. I walked back to the living room and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Rain had started again, soft, steady, tapping lightly against the glass. The street below blurred into a wash of gray and color. For a long time, rain had meant regret to me. That night I walked out, every drop felt like a reminder of what we had broken. Now, watching it, something else occurred to me. Rain doesn't erase, it doesn't undo what's been done. It just makes everything a little softer around the edges. I turned away from the window and sat at the small dining table, the same one where I'd watched her at dinner, the same one where her phone had lit up with another man's name. On the table there was a piece of paper, folded, unassuming. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. I knew I had a choice: leave it untouched, walk out, keep my distance. But I also knew that part of letting go, for me, meant not being afraid of whatever was inside that envelope. I unfolded it slowly. Her words were simple, not poetic, not dramatic. She thanked me for not yelling that night I walked out. She admitted she had been selfish and cruel and blind. She said she didn't expect a second chance, but she wanted me to know that she was trying to become someone she could respect again, whether or not I was in her life. At the end, she wrote one line that lingered. "If you never come back, I hope one day you can sit somewhere, drink your coffee, and not think of me at all." The old version of me would have clung to that line, held it up as evidence of her regret, turned it over 1,000 times in my head. The version of me sitting at that table did something else. I folded the letter again, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it carefully on the corner of the table. I didn't take it with me, because it didn't belong in the life I was trying to build now. On my way out, I paused at the doorway, hand resting on the frame, eyes traveling over the apartment one last time. The empty chair, the soft lamplight, the faint ring on the coffee table where my mug used to sit every morning. I whispered, so quietly I wasn't sure if the room or I needed to hear it more, "I forgive you." Not in a way that invited me back. Not in a way that erased the hurt. Just in a way that released me from carrying her choices like a weight across my shoulders. Forgiveness without reunion. I closed the door gently behind me and walked down the hallway, my footsteps sounding different this time. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. Morning light filtered through the clouds, not bright but steady. I walked with no bag in my hand, no keys to that apartment in my pocket, no plan other than to keep moving forward. At a small cafe on the corner, I stopped in, ordered a coffee, and sat by the window. The room buzzed with quiet conversation, the clink of cups, the low murmur of music. I pulled out my phone and saw no new messages from her. For once, the blank screen didn't make me feel abandoned. It made me feel free. I thought about calling her, telling her that I'd been to the apartment, that I'd read the letter, that I wished her well. But some things don't need to be said out loud to be real. Instead, I deleted our message thread, not out of spite, out of acceptance. I stared at the empty chat window for a moment, then slid the phone face down on the table and wrapped my hands around the warm cup. Outside, the city shifted slowly into day, cars starting, shop doors opening, people hurrying out of the rain. I took a long sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through my chest. For the first time since the night I walked out, I wasn't waiting. Not for her apology, not for her next message, not for the version of us that might have been. I was just here, breathing, present, alive. She had been a chapter, beautiful, painful, complicated, but she wasn't the whole story. I looked out at the wet pavement, the soft gray light, the people with their umbrellas and hurried steps, and it struck me that the world had not ended when she betrayed me. It had simply changed, slowly, quietly, like morning light seeping into a dark room. That was the moment I knew it was over, not in anger, not in resignation, in peace. Anger, not in resignation, in peace.